Does teamwork really make the dream work? Solo versus team game development.
Quite often, when we're approached by new or people trying to get into 3D or game development, we're inevitably asked the question, is it better to work with a team or work as a solo indie game developer, artist, designer, or animator? The short answer is, in a professional environment, you most likely won't be given the choice. So, knowing how to be a team player and work well with others is a must, if you ever hope to get anywhere in the game development or 3D industry. In our industry, not knowing how to work well with others is the equivalent of playing on a basketball team and not knowing how to pass the ball.
That being said, nowadays, with game engines, 3D and 2D tools, and programs at our disposal, solo game development is easier and more accessible than it's ever been in the past. Throughout our professional careers, and even in our personal endeavors, we've not only worked with but led several teams, as well as worked in a solo game development environment. So if given the choice, which is better, solo or team game development?
Well, in our opinion, there really is no easy way to answer that question, and it is one only you as an individual must answer. On a personal note, throughout my career and even in my personal work, I've worked with quite a few teams, most of them relatively small in size. I'd like to say the majority of them were great. I'd like to say that, but that's not really true. In all honesty, the majority of them were pretty awful, especially early in my studies and even early in my career as a 3D artist and game designer. But a handful of them were great. And while you may be thinking, if that's the case, the answer is pretty easy, isn't it?
Not quite. You see, there's nothing better than when you're working with a great team of artists, developers, designers, and animators. A team where all of you are on the same page and share your passion for your field or just game development as a whole.
Finding a great team is like finding true love. You may be lucky enough to find it with the first person you meet, but most likely you'll be like most of us, where it takes quite a bit of time and tries of sifting through person after person to find the one or ones in this case. Our goal here isn't to steer you either way, but to try to give you a few of the main pros and cons of solo
and team game development.
Let's look at the up and downsides of solo game development, as well as common mistakes we often see from new or up-and-coming solo indie game developers and designers.
First, let's start with what most people consider the main pro of solo development. You have full control over the project. Since you're working alone, your game can be whatever you want it to be, without compromising your initial vision. You don't have to spend days or even weeks going back and forth trying to justify or convey your unique vision for the game. You can add, modify, remove whatever you want without fear of backlash or argument from the team.
And the con. You have no one to bounce ideas off of and no one to hold you accountable for the game's development. In solo development, you're fully responsible for the project's failure or shortcomings, and you have no one to blame but yourself if your game was finished but is poorly received or worse, never even finished in the first place. In general, some of the best ideas tend to be an amalgamation of different ideas put together. In our thought process, it often helps to consider a perspective or view that parallels our own, as well as be made aware of aspects of an idea that we may have not considered otherwise.
Pros. Working solo expands your skill set. Working solo can force you to learn and grow far more rapidly than you would have if you had a team helping you. In solo development, you're solely responsible for every aspect of the game, which means you need a diverse set of skills to be able to do all the tasks necessary. It can often expose you and force you to overcome different areas of development you may not be familiar with.
Cons. People with far more experience in an area you are weak in or haven't explored are far better teachers than trying to learn it on your own. In this day and age, the problem isn't being able to find information. Instead, it's knowing who or what to listen to. And that goes especially true to 3D and game developers. We can't tell you the number of times we've listened or watched tutorials, and the presenter has left out a key piece of information, overly complicated the process, or overly simplifying the process. Having a physical person with experience and knows what they're doing, and can explain, answer questions, or demonstrate something to you is a huge benefit in the learning process.
Pros: you set and manage your own deadlines and milestones. Since you're working solo, there is no finite deadline from a publisher or a team. You can take as much or as little time as you like to complete the game and the individual tasks leading to it. You can take your time and don't have to put your game on Steam, the iStore, or Google Play Store until you feel it's ready to be shipped. You don't have to feel stressed or pressured to meet unrealistic deadlines or deal with the consequences if you fail to meet them.
Cons: you set and manage your own milestones and deadlines. Since there's no one to hold you accountable for completing the game or a task, it's pretty easy to either get caught up in chasing perfection and work on a set task far too long, or get distracted and put barely any time in actually developing your game. Spending more time playing games rather than making them is a common mistake we often see new developers make. Don't get us wrong, we get it. For most of us, our passions for games led us to becoming game developers, designers, or artists. But if your plan is to someday develop a game to sell, or you're looking to work in the game industry, you'll need to put more time into creating games rather than playing them. In addition, if you're a relatively new developer or working on an asset or function that's unfamiliar to you, keep in mind it's relatively easy to underestimate the amount of time it will take to finish each task. In other words, you can set unrealistic deadlines for yourself, and what you originally predicted to take days can take weeks or even months. It's pretty easy to unexpectedly spend months or even years on a project that you thought would be relatively simple and wouldn't take too long to finish, especially if you're doing something that you haven't done before or that isn't familiar to you.
In conclusion, some of the most captivative and innovative games have come from passionate and dedicated solo indie developers. We don't deny there's a certain strength in numbers, especially when it comes to game development.
But in today's market, with things such as the Unreal Marketplace, the Unity Asset Store, and many other sites that allow you to buy extremely affordable AAA quality 3D and 2D assets, levels, scripts, and user interfaces and menus, it's easier than ever to put out high-quality, well-received games as a solo developer.
At the end of the day, working solo
Or as a team, all depends on the individual. But whatever you choose, just remember,
don't just play, create.